I'm now happy to give the floor to our moderator of the day, Mr. Peter Lloyd, Regional Technical Director at US Wheat Associates, who will be moderating the full day of the forum. And as you can see on the screen, here is our beautiful panelist of the day. So Mr. Peter Lloyd, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Miriam, and welcome everyone to the third day of the IAOM. I'd like to start with a note of thanks to Miriam and her team for making this all possible. This is our first experience of a virtual get-together. I'm sure it won't be our last, but well done to Miriam and her team for making it all happen. We have 4 presentations for you today, and I was thinking last night about how best to sum up the nature of these presentations. And I think that perhaps value describes the best way of summing up the presentations today. Value is that unique combination of price, quality, and service that we provide to our customers as seen through the eyes of our customers. Mr. Salim is going to be talking to us about partnering with our customers for increasing value. Milan and Peter will be talking about methods of innovation used to increase both quality and service and price efficiency inside the mill. Our last presentation from Mr. Walter von Redding is going to talk about human value. Human value, this is our obligation as food suppliers in these difficult days. We've had 1,150,000 people die throughout Corona. And I urge you to pay attention to his presentation because it will help us to help our customers to help themselves through better nutrition decisions during this pandemic period of Corona. I would like to now introduce our first speaker, Mr. Salim MAKHOUL, Head of Research and Development at Crown Flour Mills in the beautiful city of Beirut. He has over 22 years of experience in the flour and milling industry, and he's been part of various business lines ranging from milling engineering lab and quality control. Talking to us today about innovative technology to improve wheat flour using improvers and correctors for regionally specific bread types and conditions. This is very important for us as we move towards functionally specific flours in an ever more demanding marketplace. Customer satisfaction is key to all of us in this industry. And I ask Salim now to share his presentation with us. Mr. Salim, all yours.
Yeah, please. Thank you. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon for all of you. I will thank the IAOM to give me this opportunity to make this presentation regarding the improver and the innovative enzymes that can we use in wheat flour. I want to cover in this session 3 topics: the flour properties and bakery application, the bread improvers objectives for the bakery, the types of flour correctors that we can use in the milling industry and what does impact the quality at the end, and how the individual components of the enzymes react. All of us know this photo of the wheat. If you see the wheat, it contains endosperm, aileron layer, dietary fiber, and the crude fiber. We have very nice, beautiful curves here that can explain a lot from them. Let's talk about the bakery point of view. The bakery, like always, most of the bakeries, like always, very good volume. And in case when they have any problem, even from the bakers itself, they call, okay, now we have a problem in your flour. All the millers, in my point of view, like white flour, but not always the case. all the millers speak about protein, but we have proteins that we have protein gluten, and we have protein with zero gluten. This is from the aileron layer and dietary fiber, and this is only for nutritive value. And of course, we have the minerals down, and this is the ash curve. If we see the gluten in the core of the endosperm, you have very good quality gluten, but no quantity. The target is to have a gluten quality and to have a gluten quantity. If you see, when you go towards the outer layer of the bread kernel, we have the gluten quantity will increase here, but we cannot mention that the quality of gluten drop a lot, because in our extraction in the mill, I am interested to take this part from the endosperm, because this part is very rich in micronutrients and in enzymes like enzymes, lipase, phospholipases, galactolipases, and those enzymes give you softness to the bread, and also rich in amylases and hemicellulases enzymes, and it's rich also in polar lipids, and we have a high amount of non-starch polysaccharide that I want to explain later on about them. We will, as a miller, we talk about protein. And if you see the highest amount of protein is in the aileron layer, and it's in the dietary fiber, and this is contain more or less 15 to 20% protein from the entire protein. I mean, for example, if you get 100% protein, you can get 85% what the gluten, and the others are fibrous protein. Therefore, we have to always mention how much do I have a gluten inside my flour, not how much do I have protein inside our flour. This is a completely different, and we will explain it later on. If you see the low volume, the bakery always likes the low volume. And if you see when the low volume, the curve of the low volume comes down, when you reach the aileron layer and the dietary part of the kernel. So it means that the wet gluten in the outer layer or the near the outer layer of the kernel, also they have a good quality also. We have to take them. Now, if you see the composition of wheat flour, normally we call it starchy endosperm. We have very big part here. Here we have also a damaged starch. Here we have also gluten protein, and here non-gluten protein. We have a high amount of moisture inside, and we have the pontosanes. This is an SPS, non-starch polysaccharide. And here we have ash sugars and fats. While speaking about enzymes, we have to take the fat from the flour, we have to take the pontosanes from the flour, and we have to take also into consideration the dominant starch and the amylase activity. This is a photo comparing hard red winter wheat endosperm and soft red winter wheat endosperm. If you see here a cluster of protein, it is a protein matrix that cover the starchy nutrients. And those we can mention here that we have here a hard wheat, and here in the soft red wheat we have starch, and we have very small amount of protein. Regarding the hardness and virtus kernel, we have here also high protein wheat, and on the left, on the right side, we have very soft protein wheat. And this is related also if you want to make starch damage, and to take some water absorption and to get some enzymes for some food enzymes for the yeast. Now, we have to take into consideration the gas production and the gas retention in our bakery lab. I will give you an example. For example, we make starch damage in C1 and C2 roller mill. And we have here a low falling number and a high maltose content inside the flour. I am sure that I will impact my flour negatively, especially when I have a medium to low gluten content inside our flour. This is always when I will make starch damage, I would incorporate with the lab to know exactly how much I have power, gas power inside my flour. We have in the lab, we can do maltose test, we can do falling number, and we can do amylograph test to know exactly the enzymatic activity of my flour. Here we have the gluten quality. The lab will know the gluten index, the sedimentation, the farinograph, and the extensograph. The gluten index gives you figures about the instant test on extensibility of gluten. The sedimentation, this is give you figure about gluten quality and the quantity. The farinograph also testing the resistance against mechanical stress, and the extensograph gives you how much the dough could take fermentation time inside a proofing cabinet like in the bakery. I want to focus here. I want to give you a real example. Lab is for standardization, but bakeries, you cannot have standardization. Always you have variation, because each bakery has its own process. Some bakery, they have very good fermentation cabinet, very controlled unit regarding temperature, relative humidity. And some bakeries work their dough by hand, like for example, West Africa in Conakry, Abidjan, Sierra Leone. People there work by hands. And also, let's say for Arabic lines, 1 hour fermentation, some people work long fermentation for the other day. The target of the miller, right, is to have a standardization of your flour, but you have to think like the bakery. For example, if you do a wet gluten, you have your gluten water ability to hold water inside the lab, something, but inside the bakery, something else. For example, if the bakery is the final dough of the bakery finished at 28, 30 degrees Celsius, no way can the gluten or the dough absorb, the gluten of your dough in the bakery can absorb the same amount in your laboratory, okay? And when the bakery also work with chilled water and you get 24, 26 degrees Celsius final dough, maybe you can reach your wet gluten inside inside the lab. The extensograph is very good instruments to know about the fermentation. But also you have to take into consideration the fermentation inside the bakeries. Also the farinograph, for example, the farinograph, it finished at 12 minutes or 14 minutes. But in the bakery, sometimes you finish your dough at 6 minutes. Sometimes you finished at 20 minutes. It depends. Okay, we have to look to the bakeries and we have to speak the same language as the bakeries. Okay, assuming that we have very good starch damage, very good gluten quality, and so I have an equilibrium about a gas production and gas retention. In the photo on the left side, you have this guy blown up, but the dough, you see it's still sleeping, and you make holes inside the dough. This is a problem that normally millers face it. For example, if I make high starch damage, so I give more food for the enzymes and for the yeast, and I treat my flour as under, let's say, by 5 ppm, 190,000 skb amylase inside, and also we have 26% or 25 watt gluten. Be sure that you have this problem. So the gas will blown up, and the dough make a big alveole inside the dough, and the end a big alveole inside your bread. And if you go in the right hand, it's photo in the right hand, this guy is sleeping, but there is a pool of gas production, and I need a gas power to push him up. Okay, in that case, I am very poor in starch damage, and I am very poor in amylase activity, or in a simple sugar inside my flour. I need the power to make him up. Therefore, our target is to make equilibrium between gas production and gas retention. Always, when we make a treatment with enzymatic activity, or when we make starch damage, we have to look always at the strongest of the gluten and at the gluten content inside my flour. Here a table, an interpretation about how much each bakery application can take protein. This is, let's say, cakes takes 8 to 9, white bread 12 to 13, or whole wheat bread 15, 16. Why whole wheat bread 15, 16? Because we want to compensate the presence of the bran, because all us knows that bran has no gluten inside, but it's very rich in protein for micronutrients. And this protein, I don't want it to make a dough. I don't want it to make the viscoelastic properties of the dough. I need exactly in the dough is the gluten. So 16% protein is advisable to make whole wheat bread. Now, I will enter to the bread improvers and milk correctors objective. Here, all of us, we hear about dough conditioning, bread improvers, milk correctors. But we have to ask many questions before I make a bread improver. For example, if you see here is dough conditioning, you have, we have many, but I give you four functions that we want to work on it. Dough conditioning for controlled fermentation, for machinability, adaptable to equipment, to oven spring, and better gas retention. For example, I will give you for controlled fermentation. If I have a complaint from my flour that I have collapsing after 2 hours fermentation, here I will think about, for example, lipase and the glucose oxidase. But be sure your flour is okay with 2-hour fermentation. But I don't know if the bakers go outside and make a smoking cigarette, and the dough remains 30 or 15 minutes more than the standard time. But the bakers tell you this is your flour problem, not mine. We have to think here, okay, this is my problem. I will tell this is my problem, and I will fix this problem, because not all the bakeries in the world have an automation and a very state-of-the-art bakeries. We have to make a wide range or a loop in all the bakeries to cover their problems. For example, if I will do biscuit production, I can put here, let's say, L-cysteine to catalyze or to break down the sulfide bonds, and I will put, for example, protein or sodium metabisulfate to let the dough of the biscuits be machinable and workable. This is another dough conditioning. Let's say about oven spring. About oven spring, it's necessary to have some beta amylases or fungal amylases to make oven springs during the first entering in the oven. Here we have the conditioning also for better gas retention. Better gas retention mean I need the strongest gluten, but I don't have enough gluten inside my flour. So I will go, for example, to add gluten, to add lipases, to add some hemicellulase inside to make a lubrication of gluten. So dough conditioning is not necessary to be always a standard improver. So we have to think about, for each bakery application, we have to know about dough conditioning. If you go to the bread quality is very, 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 very big word. I will give you an example. If you go to West Africa, you can find the baguette. They like the baguette, very high in volume, very good in crust color, but they want the alveole very big and very open structure, and they want it crispy. If you come to Lebanon or US, they like pandemi or toast bread. They like very, very, very fine bread, and they like the bread to give shelf life, let's say, for 2 weeks. So it's extremely different. So bread quality, we cannot mention this flour is very good for all the bread. No. We have to know exactly the bakery application to define the bread quality as per customer satisfaction. Now we can mention that we have a good quality flour for this type of bread. Okay? If you have a very good standard flour inside your mill and your bakery is not satisfied about it, so forget it. You can find in the bakeries a standard bread improver. Normally for a baguette, for butter, you have one kind of improver, and you have for soft sandwiches another kind of improver. Those improvers just a very complex enzymes. We have 4 or 5 enzymes: amylase, lipase, hemicellulase, and transglutaminase. And you can find on top also emulsifiers. For example, if I want to go for baguette and for butter, I will put datem. And if I will go to soft sandwich, I will put SSL. Datem is an emulsifier. This is a diacetyl tartaric acid of mono and diglyceride. And SSL is a sodium stearol lactylate. This is only the bread improver. And of course, you have, let's say, 70% carrier or filler inside the bread improver. Now, I will talk about a flour corrector. In the mill, you can put some oxidizing agent like ascorbic acid, and you can put some reducing agent, let's say L-cysteine, if you want to make a biscuit flour, very easy. And of course, enzymes. Enzymes, when you have a high falling number, you can put some amylases. When you have a stiff dough, you can make some lubrication of the gluten with the help of bacterial and fungal hemicellulases. So the quality control in the labs, you have to play around that. In Crown, we invent 4 types of combined enzymes. Like if you see the ASE is fungal hemicellulase with very or negligible protease side effect. You have to make sure as a miller and the quality control in your lab that when you put amylase inside your flour, you have to think with a very, very small percentage of protease inside your amylase. Because if you have, let's say, 3 to 4% from a mix of amylase of protease, you kick down the gluten, okay, or the gluten network. So you have to care about that. You can, and when you purchase amylases, you have to make sure that you have zero protease activity inside your mixture of amylase. We have the glucose oxidase. This glucose oxidase is a combination of one enzyme. This is for fast oxidizing. For example, when you put in, let's say, 3 to 4 minutes mixing your dough inside the mixer, it acts. And you have a slow oxidizing or a self-regulating mechanism, liberation of hydrogen peroxide to work in a longer fermentation time, for example, 1 day after, and I need always a small releasing of hydrogen peroxide. So this glucose oxidase inside the crown is a combination of both glucoses. We have also the PGS. It's a special lipase. Mainly its content is phospho galactolipases. You can replace datum 100%. Even you can make a clean label bread improver or a clean label milk corrector. We have also the HCX. HCX is a combination also of the bacterial and fungal hexalinases that work in the xylose inside the flour. Inside your flour, you have something called non-starch polysaccharide cells that cover the endosperm and the protein matrix. You have small cells. Here we can work on it in order to catalyze them. That will help to make a gluten lubrification inside the dough that make it somehow extensible and help us to absorb more water, that the dough absorb more water. I want to explain how it comes in the next slide. And this is an explanation about the ASE. All of us knows that the starch is a constituent of amylose and amylopectin. So the target is to have maltose at the end. If you see here, you can the amylase cuts here in the amylose, and cuts here in the amylopectin, because at the end I will get maltose here. This is a food for the yeast. The amylase enzymes give you enhanced dough fermentation and gas production. If you see here, the enzymes broke down the glucose chain and give a food for the yeast, and the yeast digest the gas power here. I need it for increased oven spring at low volume. It gives us fine and even crumb structure, improve crust color with the help of Maillard reaction, and it gives food at the end for the yeast and better gas production. Here we have the glucose oxidase. The glucose oxidase is I like it a lot, and it's very helpful enzymes in bakery application. How it works? The glucose oxidase catalyze the oxidation of a glucose and water. As you know, we have a glucose inside our flour, a small quantity, and we have water inside our dough. It catalyzes the glucose, and it gives you gluconic acid. And it gives you gluconic acid here and hydrogen peroxide. This is what I want. I want the hydrogen peroxide. The active oxygen in the hydrogen peroxide oxidize the thiol groups here of the gluten, SH groups, and the gluten protein into SS into disulfide bonds that give you stronger dough. But you have to take into consideration, but oxygen is a limiting factor, because during the mixing, you have another ingredient that always is millers, the bakeries forget to add them. Is the static pressure that gives you oxygen inside the dough. And be sure, if you don't oxygen inside our dough, so all enzymes are not active, because we need oxygen, water, some heat to make the enzymes active. But in the glucose oxidase, it's active a lot when you get an oxygen from the air inside the mixers. But when you have when you stop it and you have a bulk fermentation in the table, you can feel that after 5 or 7 minutes, your outer layer of dough is dry, because you have enzymes in the outer layer of dough, and you have oxygen is still active, comes from outside to the outer layer of the dough. So you can feel that enzymes, that your dough is dry and it's machinable. And here it works very good, the glucose oxidase, in hot countries, and when you have high temperature and high relative humidity countries like Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, Jeddah, or UAE. You have to use glucose oxidase in order to, believe me, you solve lots of your problem. Now we will talk about the hemicellulase or the hexalanase enzymes. As I told you before, we have in the wheat kernel, we have starch and we have protein, but we have the non-starch polysaccharide. Those amounts are 2 to 3% from your flour. And those 2 to 3% is a small layer that covers the endosperm and the protein. The starch and the protein. So if I catalyze the non-starch polysaccharide, starch polysaccharide, it can absorb to 25 to 30% water. Okay, so that the dough can absorb more and more water. Here I want to explain something here. We have normal dough that gas cells perforation. We have coalescence and decreased gas retention. We have lower stability of dough form, and we have low volume courses crumb. Here, if we do with the correct dose, we can find that the viscosity of the dough is open up. What I mean here is that this chain of the arabinoxylan will cut it from the center and will cut here from the side. So what we do here, we will take this results. So when we cut the xylose chain, those particles, it absorbs a lot of water, and it helps as a gluten liquefaction when you make the dough and you have a very nice structure of a gluten network. And at the end, of course, when you have a very good gluten network with very good extensibility, at the end, it gives you a very high volume bread. But we have to take care about, if you overdose the hemicellulase enzymes, it's like a sponge. The sponge drinks water, but when the sponge, it doesn't it doesn't allow motor to enter in it, it liberates again the water. So when we overdose the hemicellulase, it will liberate again the water during the working process in the bakery, and you feel a lot that the dough now is very sticky and it's not machinable. So you have to know exactly how much you have to put hemicellulase inside your flour. So if you see here, you have, for correct dose, you increase the viscosity, the redistribution of previously bound water, you have better dough form stability and gas retention, have a crumb structure, homogeneity, and increase in low volume. When we overdose, we have a drop in dough viscosity, too excessive water release, risk of too soft and sticky dough, and poor machinability. So here I give some examples also about rye bread and white bread with the use of hemicellulases. We have here, let's speak about white bread. We have here a control dough, and we can increase 20, 30, 40. But make sure if we will go to 50, 60, 70, I will get this again, the control again, and it will drop and drop down. Let's talk about PGS, or the lipases enzymes in your flour. The flour contain lipids. All of us knows that contain lipids. As Mr. Schlauer mentioned yesterday, you have to put a detacher, an intensive detacher, because of the lipids hold your flour. Those lipids, you can find around 2 to 3% lipids inside your flour, and those are non-polar. We can call it non-polar lipid and polar lipid, and also as a chemical compound, you can find it as like a triglyceride chains. The target is to have more polar lipids inside your dough. The polar lipid at the end give you stability and for your dough and your fermentation cabinet. And because of the enzymes, the phospho and galactolipids, the PGS, it will act also as a datum when they catalyze the fatty acid into mono and diglyceride. For example, it works like the datum. Nowadays, we can replace the datum by PGS. The end product of when you're using PGS is you can get, or when you're using datum, you can get a very strong dough, you can get better stability, you can get better volume and finer and whiter breadcrumb appearance. Always, I will show you, I mention better stability, fermentation tolerance, better stability, fermentation tolerance. In the real life, when the baker enters the trolley of the dough inside his bakery oven, 20% from the time it hits the door of the oven, because it enters the trolley to the oven. And when it hits the trolley of the dough, your oven, the bakery oven, if you don't have stability, be sure that your dough is collapsed. And you get a phone call, oh, you have a problem in your flour. Therefore, you have to be aware about stability of your dough. As I mentioned, PGS gives you a clean label product. Here I give some examples. We have control, we have datum output 3%. In here we have 6 ppm PGS. This is, of course, we put 4 ppm crown bake ASE and 30 ppm crown bake HCX plus 60 ppm ascorbic acid for the sample. The addition of 0.3% datum or 6 ppm PGS resulted in a volume increase of 30% compared to the control. Here also another example about toast bread. Here we have in straight dough process 30 ppm PGS reserve, equal volume, an equal volume of datum. And we have a bloom and crumb structure compared to 0.3% datum. As a conclusion, we have to, as I told you before, we have to think about the bakeries. We have to speak the same language of the bakeries. Even if we have a very good flour and very standardized flour, and we have many variations in the market with the bakeries, so I don't have good flour at the end. Our good flour is, we have to define good flour equal good finished product in many applications in the bakeries. The enzymes used in the milling industry, we have the amylases, we have the hemicellulases, and here we have also the glucose oxidases and the lipases. And if you see here, when you just put amylase, hemicellulases with the help of gas power and the lubrication of the gluten, you will get a very good volume regarding the control. And when you add 10 ppm GXZ and 10 ppm PGS, so you will get another high volume, and you will get machinability, you will get stability towards mechanical stress, and of course you will get a fermentation tolerance at the end. So thank you, and ready for question.
Mr. Salim, my question is this, that around the world, bakers will buy flour from more than one mill. Now, you have gone to a lot of trouble to develop a custom solution between you as a supplier of improvers and for your flour is now improved fully to the specifications you're requiring. Bakers also add their own improvers. What is the best solution for this when they are buying flour from more than one mill and adding their own improvers?
Yes. If the baker combine your flour with other mills, first of all, you have to make sure your flour is standard in the lab, and you have to take your competitor flour and you analyze it in order to see if you have problems in the bakery, from where's the problem, from your flour or from their flour. And you will, in my opinion, you can talk to the baker, and you can go straight to the point. You told him that my flour and comparing with competitor flour, and you can treat, for example, if they use their improver, you can treat in very low dosage.
Okay, thank you. So
yes.
The question was from Mr. Hassan. Any difference between fermentation and proofing?
No, they are the same. Fermentation and proofing, they are the same. But we have to take care about the standard relative humidity and temperature inside the proofing cabinet.
Okay, excellent. The second question was from Mr. Omar Alabud. What is the improver that makes the bread surface smooth?
I mean, you mean if you are talking about the bread surface, I mean the soft sandwich. Let's say the soft sandwich. Normally, we have to put some sodium stearolactylate with the enzymes like amylase, hemicellulase. All the enzymes should be in, and we have to take care about the baking time, because when we increase the baking time and reduce the temperature here, you will get a thick crust, and you will not take a very surface smooth, the bread a very surface smooth. Yes.
Okay, thank you. The third question was from Boniface. He mentioned you talked about flour correctors. Some
yes.
mills use vital wheat gluten. From your experience in terms of quality of final dough and cost to the millers, what do you suggest, going for high protein wheat or using vital wheat gluten as better corrector?
For me, I will go to the high protein wheat because as all we know, when we separate the gluten from the starch, we got some deformation from the gluten structure, and that deformation, it makes the gluten stiff and not extensible as I take it from natural wheat. So better to take it from the original wheat.
Thank you for your answer. So the last question was sent by Ayo. Thank you, Salim, for this good presentation. As you mentioned also, it has been observed that flour baking performance reduces with age after about 6 weeks of production. Can use of encapsulated improvers / enzymes improve the performance of this flour with age?
Yes. Normally, when we talk about the long shelf life flour, 1 year, let's say, normally we have inside the flour, we have all the enzymes are still alive. But when we add enzymes on top, we have to take care about the coating technology of the enzymes. And normally in all the enzymes company, you have many types of coating technology. And for the high shelf life flour, they coat the enzymes by fat for to encapsulate the enzymes, and when you put water in it, it will open again.
Okay.
So the coating technology will help a lot on that way. But you have to take care about the natural enzymes inside your flour, because those natural enzymes will become active. For example, after 2 weeks, they are very good. In my opinion, I will use flour after 2 weeks, but not more than 1 month in a normal procedure in the bakeries. Whatever, when you go to the long shelf life, I recommend strongly to reduce the water content of the flour or the moisture content of the flour to reach 13%.
Thank you, Mr. Salim.